Hello, friends, and welcome to How Do You Keep Well podcast. Here we will be sharing stories, scientific insight, and practical tips to inspire and motivate you to be the best version of your healthy self. I am Dr. Jaye. I'll be your host, cheering you on in this exciting journey towards a happier, healthier, and meaningful life. Do me a favor, make sure you subscribe and share any insights you have learned from these episodes with your friends and family. So together we can keep on keeping well. Dive straight into today's episode. Why can't I sleep? Why am I feeling tired all the time? Yes, these are questions two different clients asked me in the last 1 week. It reminds me of a viral tweet from a couple of months ago that said something along the lines, just to confirm, everyone feels tired all the time, no matter how much sleep they get or caffeine they consume. It was a very popular one, as evidenced by the number of retweets after. Sleep is such an important health issue. A lack of sleep has been linked with several health conditions that have an impact on our health span and lifespan. I hear someone asking what is the difference between health span and lifespan. Now, this is the main focus of my work with men and women in midlife. Laying good foundations for health in your midlife can determine not just how long you live, but also how well you live. With modern medicine, life expectancy has more than doubled since 1900. Yeah. However, increased lifespan or longevity comes with a price. The longer we live, the greater the risk of developing age related diseases. So, lifespan is the total number of years lived by an individual. Health span, on the other hand, is the number of disease free years lived. Now, the gap between health span and lifespan varies in different parts of the world. Some studies quote up to 9 years. So, for instance, someone who has lived up to 70 years may have spent the last 9 years of their life with chronic, debilitating health problems that may have required several medications or hospital visits or treatments to keep them going. I certainly know of a lot of healthy people going into their 70s, their 80s, and their 90s. And yes, scientists keep exploring how people live long and healthy, and also the impact of a healthy lifestyle in creating a healthy lifespan. And guess what? That brings us back to the topic of today, sleep. Why can't I sleep? This can be such a difficult question to answer without asking more questions. You know, I'm a typical Nigerian lady, even though I've lived in England for several years. I can't help myself, you know. I answer questions with question. So, for instance, when people ask me, how are you? I think and I ask them, but why are you asking me how I am? Okay, sorry for the distraction. Let's go back to my client's story. By the time I finished asking all the questions, it turns out they have had a chronic sleep problem as a result of working night shifts for several years. This is not unusual. A number of people in midlife tend to work overtime or several jobs at a time, and they are often struggling to make ends meet. This is a very, very big issue. And in this particular situation, my client was an immigrant. She was a migrant worker, a health worker who has labored several years trying to balance a career with raising her kids without any help. She had sacrificed night hours for work so she can be available during the day for her children. Now the children are all grown and they've flown the nest. She has changed her job pattern, but she is still struggling to sleep. My heart sank. Sometimes we all feel obliged to keep working overtime so as not to disappoint others. All these extra efforts take a toll on both our physical and mental well being. And to be honest, this is not sustainable. There are lots of people struggling, and sometimes this struggle is internal and not obvious externally. This internal struggle causes a lot of stress to our body, and it can have an impact on our sleep cycle. Talking of internal struggles, a lot of people carry their struggles to bed with them. They are overthinking, over analyzing their conversations or WhatsApp messages. This can be a sleep killer. I recently developed a better understanding of the different types of ADHD. Apart from being a doctor, I love learning. I'm very curious. When people talk about things I don't understand, I just explore a bit more. Now, the typical presentation of ADHD I had always understood was that of a young child bouncing off the walls in my consultation room. But there are a number of other types of presentations which is not readily obvious, particularly in girls where they present when they are older. And some people have described internal ADHD and various emotional symptoms occur here. They have difficulty regulating emotions, they're sensitive to rejection, they carry internal shame and tension carried from being misunderstood or not understanding the world. And this often gets played out as a conversation in the head at bedtime. Now, this is one of the many stories I hear almost every week of people who are not able to sleep. Another issue is going to bed late. Going to bed late causes a disorientation of your internal cycle. There's an internal sleep wake up cycle. And this can lead to a number of different problems, including a rise in a stress hormone, cortisol. That's correct. Stress. Going to bed late can cause a lot of internal stress to your body. Having a good quality sleep is vital for our overall health. And research has actually shown that people with poor sleep quality are at a high risk of abdominal obesity, that big fat tummy in the middle, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and even mental health issues like anxiety and depression. And that's not all. Poor sleep can also increase daytime fatigue or tiredness and make it more difficult to enjoy life. I will talk about this fatigue in a moment, but just to quickly mention, naturally, our sleep pattern changes over time, particularly as we begin to head into our 30s and 40s and 50s and beyond. We simply don't sleep like babies anymore. There's something called a circadian rhythm, and this is the beat that regulates the number of body functions, including sleep and wake cycle. And this gets disrupted over time, meaning people in midlife and beyond spend less time each night in restorative sleep. The other issue is our sleep hormone, melatonin, also gradually declines with age. As a result, as you head into midlife, you may notice you start to wake up earlier or wake up more frequently during the night. Obviously, having other medical or mental health issues during this time period would have a significant impact as well on this natural cycle. Coming back to fatigue, when we feel fatigued, most of us focus on sleep problems. One of the most Googled question is, why am I tired all the time? Why am I fatigued all the time? I have spoken to people who tell me they sleep through the night and they still wake up tired. To be honest with you, there are a number of different medical and non medical problems that can cause tiredness or fatigue despite having a seemingly good night's sleep. I genuinely feel sleep problems and trying to find solutions for sleep issue often uncover a number of other problems that is linked with our fast-paced world, the sensory overstimulation, and even our mindsets about sleep. At the end of the day, what we all desire is the need to feel rested, renewed, recovered, and ready for the next task. But remember, sleep is not the only form of rest. Proper rest and relaxation takes many forms. I couldn't help but feel excited when I came across Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith's work on rest. She's a physician and the author of Sacred Rest: Recover Your Life, Renew Your Energy, Restore Your Sanity. I quite like the terminology sacred rest. She talks about the 7 different types of rest we all need. And to be honest, what resonated with me most in this book is about incorporating enough moments of rest through the day to stay functional. Resting starts as we wake up in the morning. It is not just when we go to bed at night that our body needs rest. She talks about physical, emotional, creative, spiritual, sensory, social, and mental rest. If you want some more information about this, I'll leave a link in the show notes. So let's go on into a little science about sleep and circadian rhythm. I'll focus a bit on circadian rhythm on this episode. At other times, we will talk about the different types of sleep stages. Our circadian rhythm is the natural cycle of changes that goes on in 24 hours. And this includes all the physical, mental, behavioral changes we see in ourselves. Light and darkness have the biggest influence on our circadian rhythm. But what we eat, how we move, how we interact socially, our environment, and even the temperature in our environment have an impact on our circadian rhythm. The various rhythms throughout our body are connected to an internal clock that is located in the middle part of the brain. And is this system that regulates how we internally sense time, and it controls a number of our biological functions. We sometimes call this the biological clock. But in science, this biological clock is actually composed of proteins encoded by thousands of genes that switch on and off in a specific order. So there is a master clock that coordinates all the biological clocks in an organism or in human beings. So, for instance, in human beings, this master clock is inside our brain. And this human master clock, again, is just a large group of nerve cells that are so powerful. And they form the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is in the part of the brain called the hypothalamus. This part of the brain is very sensitive to light coming from the eyes. So during the day, as our eyes open to see light, our internal clock is activated, sending signals to different cycles in our body. Other cues like exercise, social activity, and temperature also affect this internal clock, but light is the most powerful influence on circadian rhythms. I just love this phrase from the Bible: let there be light. So, you know what? Most living things have circadian rhythms: animals, plants, microorganisms. For example, have you ever seen flowers open and close at the right time? Also, have you noticed, obviously, there are some animals that are nocturnal and they stay in their shelter during the daytime. And it is these powerful rhythms that help them to know when to stay and when to go. In human beings, nearly every tissue and organ has its own circadian rhythm. And collectively, they are tuned to the daily cycle of day and night. Now, these genes influence a number of functions in our body: our sleep patterns, the way we release hormones, our appetite, the way we digest food, and also how we regulate our temperature. Often, when we talk about circadian rhythm, it's often in the context of sleep. But to be honest, the sleep wake cycle is just one of the examples of this important rhythm. Remember how I said light exposure sends signals to this internal clock and it keeps us awake and alert. As the day falls, the internal clock sends signals to initiate the production of melatonin. Now, this is the golden hormone that helps us sleep, as well as signals to help us to stay asleep through the night. In this way, circadian rhythms align sleep and wakefulness with night and day to create a stable cycle of restful sleep that enables increased daytime activity. In 2017, some scientists won the Nobel Prize for their circadian rhythm research, where they identified the specific proteins in fruit flies that control normal daily biological rhythms. A lot of research has been done that shows the influence of circadian rhythm on a number of our functions. For instance, we talked about sleep, but also our metabolism, our weight, our blood sugar, cholesterol, mental health, a risk of depression, as well as problems like dementia. There have been links found with our immune system as well and how our body repairs itself. And in fact, there is a very interesting area emerging about the impact of this on cancer care, how we prevent some cancers and treat some cancers. I honestly believe we are so blessed to be in an era where we have answers, answers being found to some timeless questions. And I'm truly grateful for the answers we get, the skills we are blessed with, the gifts of scientists and researchers who discover new things, who test them out and make sure it is safe for people like me who break down complex medical information into simpler language for you, my everyday people. Still talking about circadian rhythm, this can fall out of sync due to various things happening in our body and environment. For example, some people have different type of gene, which is called a gene variant that can affect how the body forms the protein that controls these biological clocks. Other times, some diseases of the nerves, such as Alzheimer's disease, can disrupt the circadian rhythm. Traveling between zones like jet lag or even shift workers, like I mentioned earlier, can affect the normal sleep wake cycle. Certainly, light from electronic devices at night can confuse the biological clock. Without the proper signaling from the body's internal clock, a person can have difficulty falling asleep. They can wake up more often throughout the night or be unable to sleep as long as they want into the morning. Their total sleep can be reduced, and a disrupted circadian rhythm can also mean light, broken up, and generally a lower quality sleep. And when this rhythm falls out of sync short term, it can cause drowsiness, poor coordination, difficulty concentrating, and learning difficulty. Longer term, having poor sleep and a continually shifting rhythm can cause the risk of obesity, diabetes, blood pressure, cancer. And this is the risk that I talked about earlier on when it comes to modifying the diseases of age. Can you see how sleep links into this? Sleep is really an healthy experience that we should embrace as part of our healthy year. Here is a shout out to all the sleep scientists that we have around us. I'm really grateful for all the work you do, Dr. Funke and Dr. Ore, and all the tools that you have available for people who are struggling with sleep. Today, I will give you 3 important strategies to help you begin the process of transforming your well being through sleep. I call it REM sleep, but REM sleep is something completely different. R stands for recipe for sleep. Number one is being consistent with your sleep wake up time. Try to reduce nap times during the day. And in the third thing here is turn off the lights at night. When it comes to sleep quality, consistency is vital. People with good sleep quality often have a predictable sleep window where their sleep occurs. Good sleepers are likely to sleep around the same number of hours and stay asleep through the night. Try to set a time to go to bed and a time to wake up. And do this consistently every day, including the weekend. If you had trouble with this in the past, try and start again. Start somewhere. So, for example, if you find that you go to bed late and wake up late, maybe you could start by setting up a specific wake up time. For example, wake up at 7 o'clock no matter when you sleep at night. Honestly, it will be tough to start with, but gradually, with a sense of dedication and determination, it will start getting easier. I have known some friends who managed to get going with this by linking it up with a habit such as praying or doing some meditation when they first wake up. If you struggle going to sleep, definitely reduce your screen time. Or maybe use a blackout shade or perhaps a blue light spectrum blocking glasses to minimize light exposure starting from about 4 hours before bedtime. So if you're planning to go to bed by 11, where I know many people do that, then from 7 o'clock, you really want to start reducing your screen time. Or maybe just use a blue light spectrum glasses. Some people use drugs or sometimes alcohol as a sedative to help them sleep at night. This is not a good idea. Even if it helps you to sleep, as your body breaks it down, it releases chemicals which affect sleep. And again, I have had friends who drink tea before going to sleep, particularly caffeinated drinks. This blocked the production of sleep chemicals, which I will talk about in a minute. The third thing is try to reduce nap time to less than 15 to 20 minutes during the day. The reason for this is you really want to keep your sleep tension up through the day. The longer you're awake, the more of a chemical called adenosine you accumulate. The more sleep pressure you acquire, the more likely you are able to fall asleep at bedtime. This special chemical called adenosine is a byproduct of cellular metabolism. So the more active and alert you are or we are during the day, the more adenosine builds up in the brain. Napping, unfortunately, will decrease the levels. So reducing the pressure in your sleep tank, so to speak. So avoiding long naps during the day helps your adenosine to build up in your brain, which will promote sleep at night time. Have a regular bedtime routine, whether it's to shower, to read, meditate, something to signal to your body that you're ready to sleep. And try to start this routine at least an hour or maybe at least 45 minutes before your bedtime and reserve at least some few more minutes for relaxation. So the next suggestion I have is releasing the stress. Stress is one of the major sleep killers of our time. Or the conversation in the head at bedtime. Once you put your head down on the pillow, even your pillow recognizes those moments. And that's why some people struggle to sleep because your body is associating that time to conversation time. Those inner critic, the self criticism, the emotional pain, the trauma, the shame you've carried during the day, the insecurities, the fears, the anxieties, the worries, they cause chronic stress internally. And your body starts releasing cortisol, diverting blood away from all the parts of the brain that should be helping us to sleep. These processes send this emotional stress or this emotional chatter sends signals to that part of our brain, which is also the emotional part of our brain, the amygdala. And this makes our body sense stress, sense fear. And that's why you are in that fear or flight response. Your body will not sleep when it senses danger. So, this conditioned expectation that something is wrong as a result of overstimulation of the amygdala causes the flight response. It affects your sleep. So, my dear listeners, let's drop this worry. Study after study shows that when you deal with underlying emotional issues, it brings your body back into balance, leading to a better emotional well being. It increases your levels of joy, your peace, your focus, your concentration, and of course, sleeping better, helping to improve both the physical and mental well being. So, dear listeners, we really need to deal with these underlying emotional issues. Let's stop carrying it to bed with us. There are a number of techniques you can use to release stress. I call it the toolbox. Have a number of these in your stress relieving toolbox. My number one, obviously, is praying, but also there are others: gratitude, journaling, deep breathing, meditation, progressive muscle relaxation. And basically, that means you just tense and relax your body from your feet up to your eyes. Or tapping, the emotional freedom tapping. In fact, I found tapping recently and I think it's such an interesting technique. And I'm quite curious about it. And I would like to know if any of you have tried it before and if it works. It is a technique that has undergone a number of research and has been found to reduce stress by helping to rewire the brain and send signals to the amygdala to let your body know you are safe. And every time you tap on a meridian point, going through the tapping process and focusing on the challenge that you're dealing with, you're sending a signal to the brain that is actually helping to rewire it. So, from what I understand, tapping actually works to literally rewire the brain to change neural pathways so that you actually want to do the things that are going to improve your life and make you feel better. And there are a number of books about this. I haven't read it yet, but Tapping Solutions, I have heard, is a very good book to read if you want to explore this more. So, the next thing I want to talk about is sleep conditioning. And this is when you actually retrain your body to go back to sleep. Training your brain to recognize bedtime is sleep time and not worry time is important. Even though this may feel counterintuitive, I want you to try it. When next you're struggling to sleep, get out of bed, go to a nearby dark, cool resting area and do some relaxation exercises. You could take one of the tools from your toolbox we mentioned earlier, whether it's meditation or some breathing exercises or some progressive muscle relaxation or some light reading. Do this until you feel relaxed enough to fall asleep. Only then should you get back into bed. Sleep conditioning is like controlling the stimulus. It takes time to work. In the beginning, you may feel like you're spending more time out of bed than in it, and with fewer hours of sleep, but eventually your body learns or is trained to fall asleep more easily when you're ready to go to sleep. Some people will have chronic difficulty stopping their brain from overanalyzing or perhaps ruminating while in bed, or have difficulty detaching the feeling of stress from their bed may benefit from therapy, from cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. If you're feeling preoccupied by a list of things to do before bed, try quickly writing them down and scheduling a time for yourself to think about them the next day. The goal is to have an exercise that allows you to let go of these thoughts before bedtime. And the last one is physical movement. Moving your body with the intention and purpose of being active helps to increase brain levels of adenosine and helps you to sleep. Now, remember we talked about adenosine before. And the way this happens is that your body, the adenosine receptors is stimulated compared, for instance, with caffeine that blocks the adenosine receptors. So, in addition to a regular light dark schedule or keeping a regular meal time and exercise schedule, keeping activities as routine as possible trains your rhythms for maximal alertness during the day and maximal sleepiness during the night. Okay. So remember, keep your activities, make them as routine as possible. Try to get bright light either in the form of sunlight or with a light source, at least 30 minutes in the morning. Exercise in the late afternoon or evening, but not too close to bedtime. Exercising can initially cause an increase in your body temperature, but it's often followed by a drop in the core body temperature after an hour or so, and this may sometimes help sleep. If I may add, as you all know, if you have listened to my previous podcast, I'm a huge fan of brisk walking. 30 minutes every day, if you can do this. I wake up at least 3 times a week to do my early morning walk. And I found this helps me tick the box of getting some light in the morning, apart from in the winter, of course, as well as building up my sleep pressure throughout the day. Now, if you're approaching midlife, I would personally like to invite you to draw up a routine of physical movement that is sustainable through your years. Yes, start walking. And I like this quote by Martin Luther King Jr. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. And exercise with no force is one of my favorite things. Getting at least 150 minutes of exercise each week, such as brisk walking, is crucial for a number of our body needs. It keeps our memory and thinking skills sharp. Exercise promotes the birth of new brain cells, and it increases the production of enzymes that break down special proteins in the brain that cause dementia. So, sleeping well plays a role as well in your brain health. It helps to flush out all these special proteins out of the brain that can cause dementia. So, the right amount of sleep is so important. A lack of sleep may sabotage a lot of advantage that we would normally have gotten with lack of with exercise, for instance. Okay, remember, all work and no sleep makes people dull. So finally, I'll just talk a little bit about how we can incorporate this into our everyday life, how we can help ourselves, not just to sleep. Sleep is one form of rest. There are other forms of rest: the mental rest, the emotional rest, the creative rest, the social rest. They are all part of the basics of helping us live a healthy, wealthy, and even a meaningful life. So, one way is try to start small and slowly build these new habits of maybe sleeping in time or waking up at a particular time. It's never too late to start. And it may not be all that successful the first week or the second week, but try to persevere. Choose one step and keep working on it. The second thing, try and experiment and see what works for you. Remember the toolbox we talked about. Have a little experiment yourself and see what works for you. I certainly would recommend the progressive muscle relaxation and deep breathing as one of the things you could try, especially if you're struggling to sleep. The third thing is be intentional with your sleep. Yes, be intentional this year. Check into yourself, be aware of your warning symptoms. Pay attention to what your body is telling you. If your body or your brain is feeling tired, try not to push it. It's time for some mental rest. If you feel lonely or drained socially, seek out a form of social rest. Be mindful of your needs and allow you to take care of your well being most effectively. Take a moment to reflect on what's happening in your body. Take a moment to reflect on what's happening in your mind and your environment. Check in with yourself regularly and respond to your needs. Lastly, I would like you to share your new practice with others. Encourage your friends and your family, your children to prioritize their rest too. Share your own experiences, and you will find that this actually enhances your relationships and it creates a more restful community around you. It has been awesome discussing the stories, the science, and the strategy of sleep in this podcast episode. If you're approaching midlife or you're already in midlife, remember every little steps matter to keep you happy, healthy, and living a meaningful life now and beyond. I'll be cheering you on, inspiring you, and empowering you to keep on keeping well. Thank you, my dear listeners, for staying tuned to the very end. I really appreciate this. I would want to hear about the bits that you found most interesting and what you're going to try. Remember to subscribe, share, and like this podcast so that many more people can benefit from it. I'm yours till the next time we meet again. Keep on keeping well. Bye.